I
Hey,
have to
Ariel.
say, I just have to say, congratulations on Couple to Throuple. The show is so much fun and so messy in like the best way. I had a blast watching it.
Good.
So,
Good.
first, I am dying to know from both of you, what was it about a dating show having to deal with adding a third partner to a couple that made you want to jump on board?
Well, for me, I'll be honest. It stuck out to me immediately, and the show has had several different names, several different iterations, but the concept of the show at its core stood out to me because it was inherently queer. And I
Yeah.
was dreaming of a scenario where that was baked into the core of the show. It wasn't just like a one-off season. It wasn't like an episode or a character on the show might identify as in a way that we don't typically see on television, but that at the core of the show, it is inherently queer. And I was like fascinated and also feeling like finally, right?
Yeah.
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 I think it also I was moved by the fact that we were going to be challenging people's idea of like what real meaningful or viable relationship dynamics look like, and that we were going to be presenting them with an opportunity to understand that this has long been available. This has been a scenario or situation that people have been participating in for quite some time, and that is actually now we're seeing even on the rise, and that it's a viable option for them, mess included.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that. Same for me. After I got over the apprehension of the idea of this show, and I realized that this is not going to be just a unicorn hunting show, right? And that, like Scott mentioned, the show is inherently queer and it's something that's not been done, but it's also going to highlight non-monogamy, specifically polyamory, and especially thruples, who were historically like not the popular group under the polyamory umbrella. I especially appreciated how the show is centered around the idea, the education around it, the travel through the emotional aspects of it as well, and just help people to understand the idea of polyamory and that it's not just about sex, that it is a real relationship structure with real people, with real issues that any relationship has.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does a great job of educating people in that way.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, Scott, I really love that there is a wide spectrum of sexualities represented on the show, too. You've got like people who are gay, folks who are bisexual, other people who are kind of just starting to explore maybe how they feel about things. It's really interesting. But do you think that that made your show more complicated in some ways than a typical straight dating show?
Well, I think anytime you add more bodies, you add more complexity, right? You add more components, you add some more complexity. And I'm gonna be honest with you, you've seen one through.
Three.
You ain't even seen it yet. I'll be honest
Oh,
with you.
good.
Things are about to get crazy. And I mean that in the best way, because I do just believe that this show does a very good job. And I'm not saying that certainly every single dynamic and every single experience of that has ever existed is represented in this show. I'm certainly not foolish enough to believe that. But I do believe that most everyone will see some element of this show where they're like, that's exactly what I would have done. I would have done it exactly like that. Or ain't no way in hell that was the right decision. That's going to blow up in their face, right? Because they can identify in some sort of way.
Yeah.
I'm really very excited by the fact that like the show's creators and producers, the team involved with bringing this show to Peacock, really stayed true to the idea,
Yeah.
to the intention that this was about seeing what would happen if people with intention
Yeah.
ask themselves, is there a dynamic of a relationship that we would be better served by? And with the right support, what decisions will we make? And how would we come out of that? The outcomes aren't all, we ended up all hunky-dory. You know what I mean? I think that
Yeah.
the show does a really good job of allowing people to be exactly where they are and to show up exactly how they would. And Dr. Shamyra moves us through these experiences in these relationships where she prepares people and challenges people to dig deep, and they really, really do.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way that you have them doing a lot of fun things with each other, but also delving into deeper issues like, jealousy and boundaries and things like that. It's really great. But your show is also very funny and very overdramatic, which I also love in a reality show. But like you said, there are real connections being made, real
Correct.
feelings involved. And couples even that are kind of going through some tough times with each other as they're navigating this. Was it ever difficult for you guys not to insert yourself more into the drama that was happening?
So look at sometimes we were being summoned into this, especially Scott. But I'll say that for you to watch on the show. Sometimes we were being summoned. But I'll tell you this. It was interesting to watch, and I like to do what I call follow the tail of the comet. So I like to watch how these dynamics in these situations play out, and then I ask questions, and I have I have couples and each partner to ask each other questions about what they are experiencing in the moment, because that is when we get the most truest reflection of what people's experiences are. So there were times when I felt like stepping back more, even just to watch how it would happen and how it would play out. And there were times when I felt like, ask them this, ask them that, just so that we could actually see a real quick reflection of what actually was happening. Because again, we got to understand that we have couples who many of them were not experienced in non-monogamy or polyamory. So they're going through this experience with their curiosities and their vulnerabilities. And so they're emotionally raw. And so they feel very exposed at some points. Some of the singles also felt exposed, whether they were experienced in non-monogamy and polyamory or not. So for me, as the one who was there to help to coach them through that, sometimes I really wanted to step in, and there are going to be some moments that happen that you aren't going to see where I actually did intervene, but you're not going to actually see that. And there are going to be some that you do see, and you're going to see great displays, but they actually really responded really well to Scott's intervention. And whenever Scott would ask them questions, because Scott he's everybody's cheerleader.
Yeah.
He knows what to say, like in the heat of the moment or when things get funny. As you mentioned, it was a funny show, and Scott actually helped to make it that.
I'm sure.
I appreciate that. The idea, the idea was that we just wanted to have a real ass time in Panama and see what would happen, with these people who were interested in challenging the norm they were experiencing. And they showed up in a way they were ready to do that. Some of them showed up before they were actually ready and then had to get ready to do it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You say over dramatic. I hate to say it, we good for some drama.
Amazing.
If there's one thing we could do is some queer panic. So, it was a lot of fun to see people who would, I think, maybe even identify as totally straight, show up in a way that was accepting and honoring experiences that were not like their own. There were minds that were expanded through the experience of other people who lived in a way that was not like their own. And it really honestly, I left the experience when we filmed the show, I left the experience feeling like, damn, like as bad as it can feel like sometimes, as backwards as it can feel like we move in society sometimes, there are great, bright lights out there meaning to pull to them more and more light so that this is a brighter experience for all of us. And while, don't get me wrong, this is a dating show and it has all of the stuff you want in a dating show, it also has a really, I think, beautiful telling of what happens when we communicate in a way that is authentic and true and real, and the benefit that can happen, regardless of what your relationship dynamic is, the benefit that can happen when you do.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so awesome because you're right. You're getting all of this stuff that's like, the great kind of bingeable reality TV
Yeah.
shows that you want to see, but it also has a lot of meaning and heart to it. So that's awesome. I can't wait for people to see it. I think it's amazing. I
You're gonna
can't
be
wait to
so
see the
mad you only
ending of
get
it.
three. You're gonna be so mad you only get three
Yeah.
episodes at a time. I'm just gonna be honest with you.